So without the full context of this story, the average viewer will probably expect a host from Dateline NBC to be involved, because I went to a child's house while his parents weren't home who had contacted me over social media.
What are you doing here?
And oh my god, that sounds terrible. Before we get into it, this video is sponsored by Dubia.com. If you need some feeder insects for your reptiles, check them out with the link below. They're pretty cool. Anyway, I don't want to put the context off any longer, so let's jump into it. So about 4 years ago was my prime time of taking in reptiles from pretty much anywhere I could get them. Because me and a friend started a website called Emerald Scales where we took in reptiles, made videos about them, and then sold them on the website to people around the country. Now, I had growing subscribers and slightly more popularity over time, and so people with reptiles were like, hey, I need to get rid of mine, I'll contact him. And that's what we would do. We'd meet up, or they could be shipped to us. But in times that there were local people, we were pretty much willing to drive just about anywhere we could get a vehicle to pick up your reptile. So someone in 2018 sent an Instagram DM asking just that. So they very quickly needed to get their reptile to a new home. Lots of people are urgent for very different reasons. Maybe they're like literally going to college in a week and they put this off, but we'll do what we can. Now, normally out of curiosity, I'll like check out the profile, but this profile was completely empty. There was not a real name, there was no profile picture, and there were no posts. So it's possible they had just made this account just to contact us on Instagram, which is where we primarily talked to people through Emerald Scales. The message was pretty brief and a little bit weird just because of the blank account, but at the end of the day, we needed reptiles. We weren't going to ask too many questions, so we just asked when and where to go. They said they wouldn't actually be able to drive anywhere, and instead they just sent a home address, and it was a few hours from us, which actually meant we could go the same day, because we'd just be hanging out, working with the animals. People literally would just message, be like, I need to get rid of a reptile, I live here. And we'd be like, we'll be there, and we just start driving to anywhere that people wanted us to go, because safety was our priority. But they were happy with the pickup time, so we headed to their house. But then, after driving for a bit, we were about 30 minutes out, and they sent a seemingly frantic response saying, don't come. And of course, it's a little bit hard to tell tone over text messages, but they seemed like they really didn't want us to come, even though they were originally quite excited for us to get there with such a short time period. So we were confused and a little bummed because we just wasted like an hour and a half driving, but what are we gonna do, show up anyway? So we just turned around while being a bit confused. We were trying to figure out like what happened, what changed, maybe I don't know. But about 10 minutes after we had turned around to go back home, they messaged again saying, actually, we can come now. We were so confused. This was just such a weird experience, but we needed more inventory with animals. So we turned around again to head back to their house. And then we got to the house. It was the right address. We double checked, made sure there were no typos. And we were even more confused because there was clearly nobody home. There were no cars, the lights were off, and they didn't respond to our message saying that we were here. So we just drove 2 hours to some random house, and that was it. We were like, this is just a really like lame prank. It's not even a funny prank. Did someone just want to send us to a random house? Was this just someone being weird or creepy, or did they bail and leave before we got there? We were not really sure, and we did not get out of the car yet because we were just trying to figure out what exactly to do. Even if you have just one or two reptiles, feeding them insects can get really expensive really fast depending on the way you're getting them. But I've been using Dubia.com for years now, who is the sponsor of this video, and it's been the way that I've gotten so many bugs for so many animals of so much variety that are extremely healthy and ready to feed, and it didn't completely destroy my bank account because they're pretty dang well priced. Even though I've always been happy with their service, they've continually improved over the years and have expanded to more warehouses and more colonies of insects and more variety without the prices going absolutely insane like I feel like they have for everything else that I've been buying recently. There's been so many times where I like almost breed insects or try to breed insects, but it's just not worth the time and the space, and it just gets really gross, and it's just so much more convenient to be able to pop on, add a ton of stuff to your cart of a bunch of different variety, and have it on your porch within just a few days of ordering. So if you need some bugs for your animals, definitely check out Dubia.com and use code GoHerping for 15% off your order of bugs. So thank you, Dubia, for sponsoring, and thank you for all the bugs over the years. They've been, I assume they've been tasty. I don't know. I've only eaten a few of them. And now back to the Yeah, to the video. So anyway, back to the mysterious home with no cars, no lights, and no messages from the person who we had talked to briefly, but they were clearly a real person. But the moment that we actually pulled all the way into the driveway, got into park, and started to get out of the car, the front door of the house flew open. And a kid with a 20-gallon glass aquarium in his hands comes running out the door into the car. He looks like he's probably, I don't know, 14, 15. I don't remember exactly, but he was like hardly a teenager, and he was booking with the 20-gallon in his hands towards us. And he seemed to be kind of in a panic. He was in a rush for sure. Now, I've done many reptile pickups involving children, but their parents have always been there. Sometimes it's the kid's pet, sometimes it's a family pet, sometimes it's technically the parents, but their kid just tags along. Sometimes the whole family watches the videos, and like basically there's lots of families that rehome animals, especially to us when it comes to reptiles. And oftentimes when they were subscribers, they'd want to hang out, because I mean, they're subscribers. Like a YouTuber comes to your house, yeah, maybe you want to hang out with them. You want to talk, you want to get time, and they want us to stay as long as we can, which we would do what we could, but most of the time we did have other things to do, but we made all the time that we could. The only time people were ever in a rush is if they were on a work break, because we'd like meet them at their work and they'd give us their animal on their lunch break, or if they had like an appointment to get to. And since most viewers will be a little bit more nervous, because I mean, yeah, you're meeting someone you've watched, we're usually the ones to initiate the conversation, introduce ourselves, say hello. We kind of lead the conversation, and then the other people follow. And sometimes we did actually spend upwards of an hour plus hanging out with the family. We've been treated to sodas and to snacks, and we've hung out outside. I mean, yeah, like saying their goodbyes to the animal, taking pictures with the animal, with us, all this stuff. But this was just such a such a flip from that, because we had been having a lot of those experiences. And then there was this kid who hadn't even said hello or his name. He was very urgent, and he was just like straight up on a mission. And so he politely but frantically asked us to pop the trunk of the van. Yes, we arrived in a van to the kid's house. Okay. Get down on the ground. Get on the ground. Get down. It wasn't a white van though. It was blue. He asked us to pop the trunk to the blue van, and before we could even help him with anything, he just shoved the enclosure in the van and ran back in the house. We looked in the enclosure, and there was a leopard gecko just hanging out. A nice setup. I mean, it's not like how everyone would set up an animal. I think it was like reptile carpet, had some hides, it had even a little calcium dish, it still had some bugs in there. It was pretty clean, and it was just a healthy, big adult leopard gecko. And so we looked at each other while the kid just ran back into the house, and we were more confused than we've ever been on a pickup before. I thought that he had more than one reptile, but he just like disappeared. So maybe this was it, but he left the front door open. So we went like up to the porch. We didn't go inside. My friend kind of called in like, do you need any help? Are you good? And he was like, no, like I don't need any help. And then he came around the corner with a second enclosure. So we followed the child to our van. Sounds so bad. With the enclosure, he threw it in. He was totally out of breath because he had been running, but he thanked us profusely. He was very happy, and he seemed relieved, but he was not done, because he ran inside, and then he closed the door and locked the door. We were there, confused out of our minds. It was clear he didn't want us there anymore. He said bye, he said thanks, I don't know if we got like more than 3 words out, because we hadn't even seen him. He ran back and forth basically 3 times, and that was the last that we saw him. So since it was obvious he didn't want us there, we just immediately left. We drove down the road, kind of out of sight from the home, and just stopped to like figure out what just happened. How did these animals end up in our car? Who was that child? Where are his parents? We had so many questions, and no time to ask any of them at all. So normally, even subscribers would ask us for money. A lot of people were rehoming either for financial reasons, or they simply wanted to recoup some of the costs of the animal or the enclosure. And early on, we would pay people, but eventually the demand got to where we wouldn't, but people would still ask. But this kid obviously didn't ask. And normally people being brief, like this kid was, means that that they're trying to hide or cover something up with the animal. Maybe the animal's unhealthy, it has issues that they don't want us to see until we have it back, so that it's our problem and not theirs. But we were looking and they looked, I can't actually remember what the second animal was. Was either like a ball python or bearded dragon, something pretty standard. But both the leopard gecko and the second animal were looking great. They looked like totally like ready to go animals. He gave us both enclosures and both animals at no expense, and they were both in seemingly perfect condition from what we could tell. So it's 4 years later today. I still have no idea who the child was, and I've never heard from him again. I no longer have the Instagram account like that he contacted, but I don't even think the account existed like after that. I think he literally just made it to contact us and then like deleted it. And so to this day, I still have no idea what that was. But here's my best guess. So in the eyes of a parent, reptiles are generally not seen as pets. They're seen more like closer to an Xbox than a pet. Like if you say your kid is gonna be grounded for something and your kid has an Xbox, they might just break it. If they're a little crazy, they might throw it away. If they don't care about the money, they might sell it and pocket the money for themselves. Then it's like, well, when you're good, maybe you'll get another Xbox, maybe you can ask for a new one for Christmas, get one with your own money. And this is what parents do with children's exotic animals who don't seem like pets in the eyes of the parent. Now I know this because we've picked up many reptiles from parents doing just that. We would always feel terrible for the kid. I mean, it's pretty dang unfair. Like, I don't want to be like, it's not fair, you're getting rid of his animal, but it's kind of harsh. I think most kids have a closer connection to their reptile than like their Nintendo Switch or something. So I'm sure it varies kid to kid, but I've done a video on one of these experiences. I think it's called, I bought a snake on corn, guess, what is it? I don't know. You can just watch it here. I bought a snake on Craigslist and it ended terribly. And it did. It's not clickbait. It ended really badly. And it was a parent who was getting rid of their kid's animal because they were grounded for something. So in other instances, they'll also just release the animal into the wild. Like it's their kid's animal, they release it. People have released their own animals because they don't want it. And I haven't had a case of a parent releasing their kid's animal into the wild as far as I know. I believe that that's what this kid's parents was probably going to do. So I believe that this child was grounded and his parents were super angry and decided his pet reptiles were going to be the center of his punishment for whatever he did. They weren't going to let him rehome or sell them because otherwise he would have just told them like, hey, there's these guys, they run this thing called Emerald Scales, they can take the animal since you can get rid of them. But that's not what he did. And maybe he did have a deadline to get rid of the animals, but it was obvious that he planned all of this to make sure his parents would not be there and have no idea what was going on. Based on the urgency of all this, he must have like just been grounded and they must have been like really angry and given him like a day, like they were like, tomorrow we're releasing your animal. I don't know. Obviously this is all just a guess, but he perfectly timed the pickup to a time that he knew his parents weren't home, and he must have had us turn around originally. My guess, I know this is a stretch, but I think he had us turn around because one of his parents went back to the house. Like, let's say maybe they went to Walmart and his mom forgot her purse, and so he's like, all right, Emerald Scales, come get my animals. This is perfect timing. She takes so long when she goes to Walmart, but then when we're almost there, she gets home and he's like, oh my god, why are they already home? And she's like, hi sweetie, I forgot my purse. And then she leaves again, and then he's like, okay, now they can come back. And so he tells us to come back. That, I think it's a pretty good guess. Okay, I don't know what else it would be. I mean, maybe it was like Target or something. I don't even think there was a Target in that area. Now, based on when we got there and when he said like, oh, you can't come, you need to turn around, that was 40 minutes after is when we eventually got there, because we were like 30 minutes away and then drove 10 minutes, so we were 40 minutes. And when we got there, that means his parents had been gone for 40 minutes. And this was just on some random day. Who knows how long they're going to take on the errands. So he was probably, and if we had gotten there immediately, he'd probably be in a little bit less of a rush, because he's like, well, they just have to, put stuff in the cart and walk to checkout and drive home, like, how groceries work. But they could have gotten home any minute, pulling up behind this blue van with two strangers at their house that their kid invited to get rid of the reptiles. So imagine how much trouble he would have been in, on top of his already being grounded punishment, in addition to inviting random people to the family home to take the animals. He was probably he was sweating, but it was probably mostly from stress and not so much from running back and forth with enclosures. Now, what I don't know is why were we not allowed to be seen by his parents? I can think of very few situations where Chris Hansen wouldn't show up to two guys in a van showing up to a kid's house who they had met on social media with his parents not home. And if we had tried to explain this to anyone who arrived, it probably wouldn't have gone great. It would have been so confusing. And so I assume he knew we would have found the situation odd and maybe wouldn't have showed up, which I have to guess is why he was so brief in the messages to us. Like, he didn't say his name, he didn't say anything about, even just random people will be like, hi, I'm Joe, I'm 36, these are my reptiles. He didn't have any introduction. Yeah, he must have purposely kept things brief, and we don't really ask questions because we just want your reptiles. So I so badly want to know if this is what happened. In a way, I like the mystery of it, but I do wish that I had almost some closure, just because it's such a weird story. If this is correct, if my theory's right, what was his plan after the fact? What did he do when his parents got home? Like, hey son, we're back with the groceries. Here's your Pop-Tarts. Where'd your reptiles go? Oh wait, he wouldn't have gotten Pop-Tarts because he was grounded. I bought Pop-Tarts and then threw them away, like I'm about to with your animals. And then they're like, wait, where did your animals go? He clearly wasn't going to tell the truth, since us going there was a secret in the first place. So did he say that he released them? If he released the animal, he was like, well, I just went ahead and released them because I knew you were going to anyway. Where'd the enclosures go? They're clearly not in the trash. They're not outside. They're not in the house. He couldn't have driven them anywhere. There was no car. He probably wasn't even old enough to drive. I don't know. When this first happened, I wondered if he'd say like, oh, I gave him to a friend at school or something. But the reptiles were clearly there 40 minutes ago when the parents left. So it was within the last 40-minute period that he somehow got rid of both animals and any traces of both enclosures. If this was the plan and I was the kid, I probably would have just given Emerald Scales just the animals and kept the enclosures as a better story. But then again, he seemed to know what he was doing, so maybe he just knew better and had a plan for this. I guess we could have technically been a friend that came to the house to pick them up. Like, yeah, I called my friend, they came. But if that were the case, he could have just told them about us. Basically, I was part of a secret, hidden operation without even knowing. This child constructed a whole plan. I was part of the plan and I didn't even know until I left. So it went perfectly. The animals were great and we never heard from them again. That was the story of just one of the weirdest pickups. I don't know. I think it's pretty interesting and pretty bizarre, and it's hard to explain the story because I feel like you do need a lot of context to understand it. But that's the story, everyone, of the time that I went to me and my friend went to some random guy's house and took his animals. So let me know what you think. What's your assumption? What's your thoughts? Would you have gone? Well, how would you have responded to the messages? And finally, if you are that child, what happened? Can I know now? You can email me or something. I don't know how you'd prove that it's you. You could like maybe describe the leopard gecko or something. I don't know. But I really want to know. And that's that. Thanks again to Dubia.com for sponsoring. You can get 50% off all your bugs with code GoHerping. But that'll be it for this video. If you want other Craigslist stories, I'll just do a whole playlist because I already have a handful building, and I'm sure I'll do more. So that'll be it for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed and enjoy the other ones. I'm Alex, and thanks for watching.